Okay.
We're live.
Motion to open the November 20th meeting.
Second?
Anyone here from the public? Yes.
No.
We're not expecting the mayor this evening.
No.
Everyone get a chance to look at last meeting's minutes from the 6th?
Yeah.
You guys get to sign Michelle later.
Yeah. Thank you. For any new correspondence for us to get caught up on.
I don't have anything. The only thing I have is what related to the MERP contract, and we can get to that when it comes up.
Okay. All right. Do you have any proposed dates for the public hearing? Is Time Bond like presenting that, or is it just going to be an informational panel?
You could have Time Bond there if you wanted, but what usually happens is that at a public hearing, I would present to the board what I thought the rates should do, and then people from the public can make comments, and then the board can decide what they want to do with those. If they want to take my recommendation, or increase it, or decrease it, or not do it, or at that point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so it's more just presentational?
It's more, it's right, it would be a presentation by me explaining why the rates need to go up because of projects and what these projects are going to cost and so forth.
Right. I feel like we understand why the rates need to go up, and in the rate study from Time Bond, we got all sort of the back information about the economic impact and all the indicators that they used to show that it was, low to moderate impact. Is that going to be in your presentation? Or how does that information get conveyed to the public to sort of frame the rate increase and the need and...
See, we would probably be better off than to have Time Bond there, because what I would do is I would just talk about the need. I'm not really up on the economics of how it's going to affect people.
Yeah.
So it probably would be better to have Time Bond there. One thing that I wanted to bring this up to the board, that there is a rate increase scheduled to go in for July 1st of 2020 that was voted at by the last board. It was like a two-part thing, that July 1st of last year it went in, and then I think 10 cents and 10 cents, and then
2018.
oh, okay.
Yep.
And then this is the last 10 cents and 10 cents water and sewer that's going to go in July. So with what's in the retained earnings in enterprise at 1.7, I don't feel there's an urgency to hurry up and have it in December. And you could move that to January if you wanted to give yourself a little bit of breathing room.
Okay, since we would only be looking to have it implemented by March.
By March, or even if it's implemented by April.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah, because
Yeah, you're gonna want Time Bond. I'm sure you're gonna need time to
well,
schedule that, right?
we're going to need time to schedule it, but the other thing that happens is that between Christmas and Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's hard, it's hard to schedule things.
Oh, no, I understand that. It was more a question of, I've not seen this process before, and just wanted to know what type of meeting this was going to be. If it was an informational one where we're trying to onboard the whole community, or if it's more just procedural of you presenting us the numbers and us, yes or no.
Yes, me presenting the numbers of my recommendation to you, to the board, And then at that point, it's a public hearing, so people can speak and say they don't like it, they do like it, and need to do this.
But we wouldn't be taking a vote that day. would we?
Yes, yes, you would.
We would.
Once all comments are in, you'd close the public hearing, and then you would deliberate and say, okay, yeah, okay,
Okay.
we've decided this is what we want to do.
Okay, I thought the point of trying to have that in December was so that the rates could go in effect for the next quarter. You know, that you were saying we couldn't backcharge
We
people
can't.
for the January month for people who were ridden that cycle.
Well, the rates wouldn't go in till March anyway,
Okay,
right? So it's not like we have in December and we'd start billing them in January.
okay.
If we had it in December, we would start billing in March anyway. You
Okay.
make the rates effective March 1st so that you would make sure that everybody that had already used water was already
Yeah.
billed for that, and we wouldn't get.
So having the meeting held in January isn't gonna
Isn't any
push back the date.
Isn't any different than holding it
In
in
December.
December or even February.
Correct.
You know.
Correct, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that I want to push the
Yeah,
process
push it,
out.
right.
but- Okay. All right. And I wasn't voting for having time on there. It was more informational of like how
Yeah.
what type of format.
Ty and Bond has been in contact with us, and they wondered if we had any questions. So at this point, I probably will reach back out to Ty and Bond and say, yeah, we might want to have somebody there in case there's questions as to how you got to these
Yeah.
numbers, you know.
Not formal speak per se. but
Right,
something
nothing formal,
Right.
but obviously nothing formal that was presented to the board to go through the whole thing,
Right.
but just to be able to provide backup to their recommendation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
And our first meeting would be the first Wednesday of January, but I believe that falls on the holiday, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
First,
It sure
first to
is.
Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
it
it'd be 2 weeks from that, so that would be what the fourth.
Well, you could,
Or we could do the second and fourth.
or you could most certainly do 8 and 22, you know. You could go to next week, which was Wednesday the 8th, and then the week after that, the 22nd, and then go back in February to 1st to 3rd.
Okay.
Usually, in the past, what they've done is for the regular board meeting, the first 5-10 minutes is a public hearing of a regular board meeting, and then
Okay.
it closes, and then
Yes.
that's, it's not like that. We do an extra day, so you have
Okay.
to like schedule another day. It'd
Right,
be-
it would be on the
that's
same
why-
night as the
I didn't
board
realize
meeting.
that.
Yeah, so that's why I was saying if you wanted to do that second meeting that we would have on the 15th, you said it was, if you wanted to do the public hearing that, or if you wanted to have a meeting prior to having the public hearing, you could do that too.
Yeah, you could have our regular meeting at 5 o'clock and have the rate hearing, say, at 6 o'clock that same night.
Yeah, I think we want to go a little later for public attendance.
Sure. Whatever you
I know I have
decide.
trouble getting here for 5.
Yeah. Whatever you decide that you want to do, yeah. Yep.
So do we want to do the 8th and the 22nd in January, or do we want to just go to the 15th and 29th? Then we'll have another, if we do that, we'll have another meeting on
A week later.
the, yeah,
So,
so the 8th and the 22nd, that makes sense.
yeah.
And which date would you guys want to have the hearing?
I think probably the second one of the month, I think a little further from the holiday for
Oh, I got you.
people to settle in
Yeah, and
and get
that,
back to a
and that'll
schedule.
give you a meeting to discuss stuff too prior to
Yeah, our sort of final strategy.
public,
Mhm.
yeah.
For the next meeting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the current rates and then put the increases on them as outlined by Ty and Bond, so you can actually see what those numbers are. Right now, I think we're charging for water $3.15, 100 cubic feet.
Yeah.
So 2%, what that 2% would look like, and, you know.
It's just looking at somewhere.
6.5.
Yeah, 6.4. Table 6.5 and 6.4. water and sewer rates.
And there's just a big clip section here. I thought this one was made for you. Check that out.
And I think the only question I have to them, and I may ask them directly, is I don't remember their reasoning for why they did a 2 and 2 and then jumped to 5. Because that gets our retained earnings relatively low by 2021. We didn't know why they weren't a little more aggressive in the beginning and then ramped up.
Yeah.
You know, because basically in 2021 we're no better off than we were right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was just a question I hadn't wrapped my head around it when we were getting the PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Or 6.6 is the one, I believe.
I was looking at the figure 6.3. Not that I want to increase rates quickly, but,
Is the page you're on 6.6?
oh, I'm sorry, it's page 6.6, figure 6.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Got you on the same page, you're
They-
welcome.
That they were proposing a 2.2 and then jump for 5.5. And I just didn't know why they didn't ramp it up a little quicker to sort of stabilize the retained earnings since they dropped in 21, 22, 23.
What I can do is I can talk to him and relay that to him so that he can.
Yeah, if
he
there's a
can-
justification or,
He can hash that out, so he'll have that information when we get here. Yeah.
and eventually gets us to the same point, but,
Yes.
selling a 2, 3, 4, 5% step rather than 2, 2, 5, 5 was,
Mhm. Yeah.
all right. So we're thinking public meeting on the 22nd?
You want to do 6 PM?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. All right.
If that's okay.
I think that's what we usually do.
We'll try to make it as open and accessible as possible.
Yes. We can post that on the website.
Yep, I'll talk to Marco and to Ashley.
Yep.
Does anybody have an issue with that, or it seems logical?
Seems fine, I
Okay.
just, I don't know if I'll be here or not.
That's true. Dodge that bullet.
We'll see.
But not that your alternative is
Mhm.
better.
No, definitely not.
All right. On to number 6. So I know I said I would try and have a draft, but when I went to actually, frame one, I really didn't have much information to speak as a board. So I just wanted to make sure you're all, reading through this, it's kind of all over, but one of the questions they bring up, because I want to try and address the questions that they have. So one of them was about stop signs, and I looked into it, and obviously stop signs are not traditionally used as a traffic calming measure.
That's correct.
We need to have a justification for being there. Other than that, like
That's right.
if you want a 4-way stop, both crossing streets, they have to have roughly the same volume.
You're right.
So
They've got to meet what's called the warrants,
Mhm.
right? You don't, the manual on uniform traffic control devices says you don't use stop signs as a means of controlling the speed of traffic.
It's just arbitrarily throwing up a stop sign in a throughway is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're in Portugal and then they have stoplights out in the middle of nowhere for random, just for that. They sense speeds, and if you're speeding, the light will turn red, and you'll have to come to a stop.
But
And
otherwise you
then,
can pass through.
right, if you're doing the speed limit, it didn't change, it doesn't change colors. That's how they get people to slow down.
No, that wouldn't work here.
No, not quite. I will not propose that. The other thing, I think you had mentioned in passing in some of our previous meetings that, reducing the apparent width of the road by using striping is, and then other things I've looked at, is a, sort of a step one.
Mhm.
They were under the impression that there wasn't enough room, but I feel like in a previous meeting you said we might do the striping in spring when the weather permitted.
That's correct.
Is there adequate lane width to have the yellow, white, and a curb?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And is that something we are going to do in the spring?
right,
Okay.
right.
So for an initial step, we'll propose that we're going to be striping Clark.
Clark, it has the yellow stripe in the middle now.
Mhm.
We'll be putting the white edge lines down, the fog lines.
Okay. It's too late in the season.
It's too late to see them get it now.
Do you know why they were told at the end of the first paragraph there was not enough room? Do you know why they thought that?
I don't know why they said there
Okay.
wasn't enough room, but
Yeah.
there certainly is.
Okay.
There certainly
I
is.
just didn't, I was wondering.
It's at least a 26-foot road, so you would need 13-foot lanes, and you've got 13-foot lanes there.
Okay.
You don't, so you can get it out here.
And what portions of Clark is that going to happen? Basically from East Street
The
to
entire,
Holyoke?
right, the entire section of Clark.
Okay. All right. And the key issue that they were discussing is they basically asked us to put in speed humps or some other vertical control device. And you're not in favor of that?
I'm not in favor of that. I feel that if speed is an issue, that's more of a enforcement issue. Speed bumps, they would cause a problem with snow removal. Even during a rainstorm, drainage, you have to make sure that you're not backing that up. And if you leave a section open on the edge in the wintertime, it's going to freeze, and that's more of a maintenance issue. In plowing snow, that's more wear and tear on our trucks every time they got to go over those things. And our trucks are loaded; they're loaded for a reason, and that's just, you know.
Okay, yeah, in my reading up on it, it also seemed like you can't just have one or two speed bumps, otherwise you get acceleration and
That's right.
deceleration effects. If you want them, you need them basically enter every block
That's correct. That's right.
to what they
yeah.
call like a maintained speed.
Maintain speed. I think they would, if there's no blocks, they would recommend that no greater than 500 feet, I think they said, between them. So if I remember right. So to take Clark Street, this section where you don't have blocks, but if you put them every 500 feet, that's a lot of blocks.
Mhm. Okay, and
And the time I'm in between and out of driveways, too, is another thing.
And what about, so currently in all of Easthampton, there are no speed bumps?
There are no speed bumps.
Because they bring up that they are, used in Holyoke and Northampton.
Right.
and-
Westfield's taking theirs off. They've actually lowered theirs on Elm Street.
Okay. What about like raised crosswalks? Is that a similar issue or?
Raised crosswalks are a little bit different. They're not as high as a speed bump. However,
They,
those are very expensive to put in because they're constructed. We didn't do any up here on Cottage Street, but when we do Union Street, we can do a couple of them on Union Street, but we won't be doing them all on Union Street either.
and are they more for visibility for pedestrian safety of notifying the driver of a crosswalk, or are they also used for speed control with the lower profile? Does that even slow people down?
They say what happens is with the lower profile, when the motorist comes up on top of it, they realize it's something different, but they don't jam the brakes on, but it just makes them more aware of their surroundings because it's changed.
Change
Okay. And in one of the Pioneer Valley Traffic Calming Commission things I was reading, they mentioned like temporary speed humps or speed bumps or speed cushions. And they actually said that Amherst had used them and had removed them because they didn't find them effective,
Mhm.
but made them available to other municipalities if they want to try them. I guess they're just in a garage somewhere. Is that something you've heard of?
I haven't heard of that.
You know, that they used them, didn't find them effective, but have made them available.
Again, there's
Temporary.
The temporary ones are a maintenance issue. You gotta put them in, you gotta take them out. You take them out November 1st, and then the people start speeding again. You took them out too early, and then March 1st, when are you gonna put them back? You know, this is what we're gonna fight, so.
Okay, yeah.
And that's a cost too.
And that's a cost.
They're, yeah, they're about twice the price of the asphalt.
Right,
Well,
yeah,
plus the install and removal.
right,
Okay.
Joe, you were at that meeting, this one?
yes.
What did Alberti have to say?
That he had as many cruisers out as he could have out, and he was doing as much enforcement that he could do, and,
Clapped it in our lap.
yeah.
There's an officer at the east end of Clark Street for some time in the mornings. Not recent.
Yeah,
Is there a certain time, you know, that the people are complaining about
yeah.
that? But they didn't really give us a ton of information.
Well,
I didn't think.
at that meeting, it sounded like it was happening all the time.
Didn't matter.
Didn't matter, it was happening all the time. And they can sit in their kitchen and they can hear the cars go by and they know they're speeding.
Well,
That's pretty good.
I know when people are speeding on Holyoke Street too. It's different. So my last thought was, because they asked us, they'd like to know what the DPW can do to work with the safety subcommittee around pedestrian safety, because it affects us all. I didn't know, this is something from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. It's part of a larger packet that they have on traffic calming measures. And basically on page 2 of this, it talks about how communities can develop a comprehensive traffic calming program where it wouldn't basically fall in our lap. It would basically be another sort of either part of the safety subcommittee or something on its own where, you know, citizens can identify, you know, areas of concern, just so it's not a reactionary thing.
Well,
And
see, that's the thing, if you go to Clark Street and, okay, we'll deal with Clark Street.
right,
Then Franklin Street, and then Berry Street, so, well, they're over there, how come they're not here, this type of thing.
right.
So, I think that's a great idea, look at comprehensively. and
Like
say-
as reports come in, then like step number 2 is the committee evaluates potential locations and it develops criteria for ranking, like which areas are priority. You know, and then because obviously our funding is at its limit,
Right.
you know, one of the steps is they determine funding availability, whether it comes from general funds or traffic mitigation fees, and, you know, so basically by the time it gets to us or planning or engineering, there, you know, it's not just a reactionary measure, it's been vetted and studied.
And there's a plan going forward.
Right, so,
And that's gonna cost money.
And that's gonna cost money.
right. Is this something you'd be comfortable with me proposing? So
Yeah.
it's not just, you know, constituent letter triggers, action triggers,
Right,
you know.
right.
I'm not trying to add another layer of complexity to this, but.
No,
You know, because if somebody came to us and, you know, another committee had said, this area has been identified and we found this grant to deal with it,
Mhm.
we'd obviously be more than happy to undertake such a.
That's right. And I'm in a position where right now, if somebody comes to me, the only thing I can tell them is, I don't have any money to do that. That's the only thing I can tell them, you know?
Right.
But if there was some sort of a comprehensive plan, yeah, we've identified this street as something that we should be dealing with, and we need to look for some funding so we can get this done, you know? And
We'll
then,
pick the potholes in the spring.
There you go.
But
We'll
also-
see, we're going with a natural effect,
Sorry, I couldn't help
Yeah.
myself.
natural erosion,
Yeah.
and
And not that I know that funding is out there, but I'm sure if there is, weight is given to a community that has a background plan developed to
absolutely, all the
implement the
time,
funds.
all the time.
You know, nobody's gonna hand you a blank check, but if you say, we've identified this,
Well, the other thing, we've identified 101 areas under the Complete Streets program that are deficient, that we need we need work on. Well, okay, so when that Complete Streets grant funding comes up, we've got that plan ready to go. Say, look at, here, we know you can't fund them all, we can't do them all, but here's our deficient plan. We can pick a few of them out of them anyway. So, you know,
Ready to go.
we're ready to go. So we could probably use Complete Street funding for this, the same thing, you know?
Okay. All right. I think that's a good start for me. Anyone else have any thoughts on traffic calming or our role in it?
No, you're just saying that, last line of the first paragraph, that yellow line paint will be done?
It currently is a yellow line, but we're going to do white
White
lines
line.
along Clark.
I think that's a pretty good answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, and now with me forming a letter, it technically has to wait till we come back around again for me to present.
No, if the board votes tonight that
I'm free to speak on their behalf.
you're free to send a letter to the subcommittee, you can sign it and send it.
Okay.
You know, and it would show up in, if you give us a copy, it would show up in the next packet so that everybody's on the same page, but you don't have to wait 2 weeks for the next one.
Right, you're basically telling us what's in it, so.
Yeah, like
You know, it's not like we don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna deviate from that, so as long as I stick to the points we discussed, is the board okay with me presenting a letter?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to allow you.
So, thank you. Can I close that loop?
And so
Thanks
this is
for following
severe.
up.
So you're gonna give this to the safety committee?
Yeah.
Okay, here you go, maybe try this.
Basically.
Let's
with-
strike maybe
with
this.
the,
Put
with
some work in their
With the
pocket.
caveat that we are gonna strike.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
Clark as a,
Yeah.
Right, you are solving a couple of things, it's just the bigger picture needs to be thought out.
yeah, we can't
Right.
react to everyone.
Yeah.
All right. Number 7, outfall.
Outfall information, but we, as I told you at the last meeting, the free cash and retained earnings and enterprise has been certified, so there's money there. I sent a memo to the mayor asking that these funds be appropriated so we can go ahead and do it. But I didn't realize that the procedures changed a little bit. I thought that request originated out of the mayor's office, which it has in the past, but it's changed. We actually have to fill out the form and get the signatures and then send it back to the mayor. So we lost a couple of weeks on that. So we're going to be filling that form out, getting it to the mayor. But it's still got to go to city council. Whenever the mayor presents it to city council, it goes back to subcommittee and then back to the full committee. So there's 2, 4, 6 weeks before it's approved. And that's going to put us smack in the middle of winter. So I don't know how that's going to work. And we talked about some sort of contingency in the fall time as to how we're going to, springtime, how we're going to make this thing work if we get high water. And I need to sit down with our consulting engineers and say, it's looking like we're going to be out there in the springtime. So, you know, how do we deal with that?
Okay. Yeah, my thought, I gave a little bit more thought to that, what we had talked about, like a contingent discharge point above the breach.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if there's any benefit to doing that as far up the line as possible.
Mhm.
So after we camera the whole thing, if we know we have other breaches or, disrepaired areas that we'll have to get to in the coming years, that we always have this, secondary temporary discharge to when we need to do work. Our emergency discharge plus that temporary can take the full load of the
divert.
two. It's just, instead of a one-time temporary, sort of filling in a temporary diversion, that could be used,
Could float that out there.
for the next 5 to 10 years as we do line repair.
Yeah.
It's just a thought, if we're gonna do it, maybe, because I don't think, I'm sure most of the pipe is not much better than.
Told them put it in the 50s, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, this isn't an anomaly.
No.
I think this is the first of many, so if we can have a contingent discharge that meets the full capacity of the pipe.
Right.
We could then do repairs at any time.
Yeah, and it's in the IWRMP to investigate that line
Mhm.
to see what we needed to do with it, because we weren't quite sure. Well, it's gonna happen sooner than later.
Right, so once we get the results of that, then probably, then we'll have to think
And
about.
we'll have to think about phased repairs if we have,
Right.
a means of
Yep.
managing the flow.
Yep.
It's going to be an ongoing concern. All right, on to Murph
On to Murph.
and the upside down world we live in now.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask Michelle to talk about this because she's been going to the meetings, but.
Yeah, I have another meeting tomorrow too.
Yeah.
What they did is they presented this to all the cities and towns that do recycling. And they're finding that paper and glass, they don't have anybody,
Yeah.
any market for it. So right now, the Murph in Springfield is taking glass, they're processing it, and they have a stockpile of it. So and then they have to pay to get rid of it. So they're requesting that the city to start not putting glass in the recycler that goes to them. So, but they said that if we could find a use for the recycled glass, they would give us all the processed glass they have, and give us a credit for it. So they said like under sidewalks,
We don't know what
So
to
they
do.
want us to paint their fence.
Right,
Pretty much.
that's right. We don't know what to do with it, but we'll give it to you if you know what to do with it.
right, but they made like suggestions, like if you're putting sidewalks in, instead of using gravel, you could use the processed glass.
The asphalt didn't work so great on the
No.
bike path.
I know, I was just gonna say that.
But that's under concrete, so this would be under concrete, so
The bike
using it
path.
as
As
a
a base,
right, because after a
Like a
while, it would
mix.
just turn to dust
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
like gravel.
shredded tires.
Happened here.
Yeah.
No, it
Not- not here.
Not here.
Wow.
When they did the bike path from through Hadley to Amherst,
Right.
Yeah.
they mixed
Yeah.
glass with the
Yeah.
blacktop.
On the top coat.
On the finished surface, and people were
Yeah.
throwing
Also
tires on their
tires.
bicycles, you know?
Yeah.
Just shredded.
So that's that, but, we have to sign a contract with the Murph by the end of January. And we have to pick dual stream or single stream, and right now the city's dual stream, what we get rid of out of highway garage, because we're not involved with the private pickup around town, that's those companies' responsibility to take care of that recycling, but the stuff we take at the highway garage, that is our responsibility. And we're dual stream, which is on a little bit cheaper side if you're paying to get rid of, because it's separated, not all one. But they said if we didn't sign the contract, because that's an option that you don't have to sign the contract, that you're not able to get into the contract until 5 years from now when something comes up again. So when I talked to them, because they said an option for us, since we're such a small bit that goes to Murph, if we opted not to have any recycling in town, that we wouldn't be penalized. But as long as we had a dual stream contract with them, if we sign the contract and then not use it, that's okay, but we can't not use it and then want to use it and not have one in place. So either way, if we sign the dual stream, our butts are covered, no matter what we decide to do. So it's just,
So we can sign a dual stream and only send one
right,
portion of it.
right, and or not send any. Like if they decide that they're not gonna accept any recyclables at the highway garage, then
There's
that
no
would.
penalty for
There's
having
no
an open
penalty for not
contract.
having, right. So, but dual stream is the cheaper side than single stream, so single stream is a little bit
See,
more
the only
expensive.
thing that I would caution is that Easthampton being a green community, if we were to say, well, we're not
We're not
gonna recycle, what's that gonna do to our green community's, status at that point,
Yeah, and we do have the hazardous waste that's set up through NEDT in Westfield. The residents all can use up to $30 per household, and we have money in that account up to $2,000 for the year. And that's a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, instead of having a single hazardous day here in the city. So that seems to be working very well because we've had quite a bit of response on people going there. We probably had over 60 households that have used it. So since it started in September, so that's worked out really well.
In the cost this year, what do they feel at July 1st that cost to us is going to be about $15,000?
Yeah, between $15,000 and $20,000 that we'll have to pay for recycling, because right now the MRF pays us to take their stuff because they had a market for it, but they don't have a market anymore, so now instead of getting paid, we pay. So, and it averages out between $15,000 and $20,000 a year is what our cost will be for recycling. And that's for 5 years. So, I know they have increases that they'll do yearly, but I think
It was like
$20,000.
2.4% or something.
Yeah, yeah.
4.2 or something.
Yep. So it's not too much, but, and they said in 5 years, if the market turns around, then they'll renegotiate and stuff will still pay or get paid.
So where would that come out of our DPW budget or in the next municipal budget? There would be a line item?
That would be, that increase would be in our next municipal budget, so one that we would be preparing in December, January for July 1st.
Yeah, and that would be a
We
new
wouldn't
line item.
have, we wouldn't have a shortfall for half a year this year?
No.
No, it's not till, beginning of July. That would be-
Yeah, I'm sure that they understand the way budgets work in the municipality, so they, to stick something in mid-year would create havoc in every city and town. You know.
Okay.
Yep, and there were, I think there were the meeting I was at, I think there was between at least 35 different communities that were there at that one meeting in Easthampton. So, and they were having another one this week. So I don't know how that one
So
Okay.
just simple question, that this is the only option for municipal contract for recycling?
Pretty much, yeah. See, we handle our trash differently than other cities and towns. And like West Springfield, they do a citywide contract, and they pick up the recyclables and the trash, and the city bills each individual homeowner. So we don't do that. We rely on the homeowner to go get their best price and pay it directly. So, you know, if we had a contractor, the contractor would probably come to us and say, well, hey, I don't have a place for it, so guess what? My costs are going up, so I guess who's gonna get the cost? You are, you know? So,
Any other thoughts on that?
Nope. Is what it is, really.
Yeah, and well, the woman from,
I pay for my own, so.
the woman from the, was she from Veronica? Is she from I can't remember.
yeah,
Veronica.
she works for DEP, yeah.
Yeah. She came in and she says, well, you guys just, pick up your own trash. I looked at her, I said, do you know how much is involved in that, money-wise? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, one, we have nothing. So that means we have to buy trucks.
Yeah.
So you're looking at, what, 3, maybe 4 trucks? And I'm like, you're looking at over $1 million in equipment. I said, that's not talking about who you're gonna staff it with. I said, if you can pull out another $5 million out of our budget, sure, we'll implement our own trash pickup. I'm like, but if we spent $5 million on trash, people are gonna scream that we didn't spend it on roads.
Or something.
Or something.
Yeah. She's just like, oh. Good idea, but not quite.
So there's nothing to act upon today,
Nothing.
just
Nope.
information?
Yep, just information.
All right,
Yep.
keep us updated, but it sounds
Yep.
like that is a,
When your hands are tied, they're tied.
MVP grant?
Yeah, the MVP MVP grant, municipal vulnerability grant.
Oh, I asked Diane to just give me a list of stuff, so then that way it's a quick
Oh.
breakdown.
Well, we have applied for that grant. The deadline was November 7th, so that grant's in. We won't hear till first part of mid-January whether we were picked for something. So, yeah. We applied for a $364,000 grant, which will include a 25% municipal match. The match will be achieved through a mix of in-kind work and straight funding from the city. The grant will span 2 fiscal years, and we're working with the planning department on that. But
Yeah, the engineer gave me that today, so I can make copies of that and email it to you guys. Because she even sent me the whole grant too, if you want to look at the grant yourself. So I can just email you her
Sure, thanks. Yeah.
whole thing.
Good to get familiar on it as it
Yep.
comes up.
And the director's report, I have nothing on the director's report, so.
All right. All right, any other new items anybody would like to edit to next meeting's agenda? All right. Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second?
All in favor?
Adjourned.